spiritual listening. And he has a way of, yet despite his age, or maybe because of his age, of energizing the people around him, enjoying long bike rides like yesterday in the snow. Maybe you can tell us more about fat tire biking in the snow yesterday.
That was good.
Father Charlie Brunick is in senior ministry here in Grand Rapids. Has been a Paulist priest for almost 52 years. He's an avid historian, and he often educates the fellow Paulists at the dinner table each night with the history of the community, history of the church, history of the country as well. And he also keeps busy with lots of long walks. You may see him walk around the neighborhood, and he does probably about 15,000 steps a day. Father Charlie, maybe 20,000 on a good day.
On a good day, but with this weather, I'm lucky to do 10.
And we have Father Joachim Lally, also in senior ministry here in Grand Rapids, and has been a priest for almost 57 years. He is his humor, which I'm sure you'll hear a little bit about, or experience, I should say, and contemplative spirit bring life to those around him. And when he often does mission trips to Dominican Republic pretty soon, a few weeks, I think. Likes to play golf and helps out at the clothing center right next to our rectory. So thank you, our three Paulists in their third of life, for being with us today. How I would like this to be, I'm going to start things off and ask some questions to them and have them tell a little bit about themselves, but I want to leave a lot of time actually for you all to interact. I think that's one thing that came about when this was being discerned, this panel, this event, was that folks wanted to have some interaction back and forth with our senior Paulists. So I want to make sure we have plenty of time to do that as well. So, first question for each of you, I can start down with Father Bill. Is just by way of a little bit of background, and you'll have the same question. How did you meet the Paulists, and what just briefly, and I'm going to say briefly a lot because my task is a hard one, because Paulists are not shy about expressing themselves, which is often a good thing, but when there's limited time, it's a challenge for those who are trying to moderate that. So I have a tall task there, but we'll start off. How did you meet the Paulists, and just briefly some of the ministries that you've been a part of, just so people get to know a little bit about the background of you all.
The other people.
I had no idea that I would become a priest when I was younger. I was an engineering student and at Purdue University and then at UCLA, and following in my father's footstep, he was an electrical engineer. But I came across the Paulists at UCLA. They had the campus ministry there. And a couple of Paulists were particularly significant in my life, helping me envision a new future. It was the time of Vatican II. We got very excited about the changes in the church and the people being the church. And I got very excited about being someone who could animate college students and help them form community and help them dedicate their life to God. And so that's what really attracted me to the Paulists, was the idea of being a campus minister, which I did for many years. For 19 years, I was in campus ministry, and then got involved more in parish work, and am in parish work now. So.
Thank you, Father Bill.
Welcome.
Father Charlie.
Like Bill, I didn't really think too much about the priest until I went to Catholic school. I grew up in Massachusetts, in a little town south of Boston, Quincy, but we had no parish school. We went to church on weekends, but obviously, but it was a couple of mile walk. Not too many people had cars, so I wouldn't say we were a real churchy family. But we moved to New Jersey. My father changed jobs, and we lived on about 100 yards from the church, about 80 yards from the convent, and 100 yards on the other triangle from the rectory. So all of a sudden, I found myself pretty and going to Catholic school for the first time, getting pretty indoctrinated. But I figured out real early, if you joined the Future Priest clubs, you're on the good side of the nuns. So we kind of, that was kind of the introduction. But unfortunately, the darn thought wouldn't leave. I was all set to go to college in Philadelphia. We live across the river, and I had some aid and stuff, and I talked with the people saying, well, I got to get this thing off my back. Will the aid still be good in January? So and they agreed, being a good Catholic school. So I went to seminary for college in September, and lo and behold, I liked it. And I stayed. I always tell people the reason you enter the seminary aren't the reason you stay. The reason you get ordained, not necessarily the reasons you stay in the seminary aren't necessarily the reasons you get ordained. The reasons you stay in the priesthood aren't necessarily what you had when you were ordained. You want to keep growing, keep developing, keep experiencing. But my first attraction to the Paulists was in a Catholic school vocation thing in Philadelphia. I just picked up the pamphlet, Missionary to Main Street. And I knew the priesthood was there, but I didn't, the diocesan priesthood is a special, very special ministry, but I really wanted a community life. And I also liked the evangelization aspect of Missionary to Main Street. So, that's how I met the Paulists. And as I said, the more I got to know about them, the more I liked them, and I'm still hanging around.
Thank you, Charlie. Charlie would be considered what we call a lifer in the Paulists.
I entered after high school.
Right after high school.
College.
Been with the Paulists pretty much your entire life. Thank you, Charlie. Father Joachim.
Okay, I was born in Memphis, Tennessee in 1939, and moved to Southeast Arkansas, and went to a Benedictine monastery high school, boarding school, and I joined the seminary in 1955. So 66 years ago, I think it was. And I was a monk in the monastery. I made vows in 1959, took the name Joachim, and then I was there. I got a master's in counseling and was guidance counselor for the school, but something was missing. And so I wanted to work with the poor. And so I was able to go to the University of Arkansas for a year, and then from there to St. Louis, where I had an inner city Black parish for 3 years, where I was robbed every 2 weeks and on the floor of my office with a shotgun on the back of my head. And I had a bullet go by my ear and was attacked by a guy off his meds, but I loved it. Okay. And so, but then I really wasn't being supported by the Benedictines at the time. I was ordained in 65 as a Benedictine. And so I looked around for other communities that would be more supportive. And I looked at the Jesuits and the Paulists. And I had met Jesuits, but never met any Paulists. But you'll be shocked when I tell you the clincher, okay? I saw in the National Catholic Reporter how the Paulists were kicked out of a parish in Richardson, Texas. And I thought, that's my group. And I contacted the Paulists. They sent someone to St. Louis and interviewed me and everything. And I was accepted and went to the novitiate in 72, 50 years ago, and was assigned to Grand Rapids, Michigan. I never heard of it, and was here 3 years, 73 to 76 at the old information center, and then was sent to Boston and worked with Hispanics for, oh my gosh, from 1978 on, and then moved to Lawrence, right next to the New Hampshire border, became in charge of Hispanic Youth Ministry for the Archdiocese of Boston for 20 years, and started leading missions to the Dominican Republic and training young adults to be leaders in the Hispanic community, and called Paulist Hispanic Evangelization Leadership Program. And then I was assigned to New York, Good Shepherd in 2002, and then over to the main Paulist house, the St. Paul's, and then back to full circle, back to Grand Rapids in 2008. And I went to senior ministry in 2010, and I'm living in St. Jude's. Been living there 11 years, but I'll be moving back in May to the Cathedral Rectory. So full circle, okay?
Yeah.
So, there you go.
Thank you, Father. And ever since he joined, he's been trying to get us kicked out of parishes. So
I finally have a car that lives up to my name. It's a Rogue.
Thank you, Father Joko. So my next round of questions has to do with your experience and your age, let's say. Now, I've done the math, and collectively, you've been ordained for about 150 years. Each of you has been ordained longer than I've been alive, actually. But as you're looking back in the recent times in which you've kind of felt the aging process more present than other times, what can you tell me a story about a time in which your advancing age felt burdensome? We'll start there, and then we'll go to we'll flip the script on the next question. But let's start with when your advancing age felt burdensome. Father Bill, please.
Well, first of all, I'm a complete neophyte at this third of life.
Experience.
I'm learning so much already. It creeps upon you, as everybody here knows. It's not like one thing happens, but you go, it's a little more difficult tying my shoes than it used to be. It's a little more difficult staying upright when I feel like I'm tipping. So I think balance is probably the thing that I noticed the first. Riding, I love riding the bicycle, but falling sometimes, and you go, how did that happen? You were mentioning riding in the snow, which is a lot of fun because when you fall, it doesn't hurt. I was up at Cannonsburg and they rent these fat tire bicycles. I thought, I'm going to try that out. So someday I hope that Rob will go with me, because Rob is a fellow bicycle rider. And I guess just not being able to do the things you used to do. And since I got my diagnosis of Parkinson's last year, one of the things they said to me is they emphasized, you have to force the exercise. I go, that's a pretty strong word, force the exercise. It's not the same as just sitting in front of the television on a bicycle, spinning the wheels. It's, really work at it. And it's something I've always loved to do. So I guess the challenge is still there. Force it to the level you can.
Cool. Thanks, Father Bill.
I've been in that, I guess, the third cycle for the last 15 years, but it never really hit me until like the last 6 months or a year. I think very few Paulists, even though you enter the age for senior ministry, which I did 15, not yet 70, you still stay active. I mean, well after 60s or 70s, we supposedly can go into, are eligible for senior ministry in 70. But I waited until, 2016, so whatever that makes me, 4 years ago. And the only reason I did is that the community had withdrawn from Oregon, where I had been pastor. If we were still, I might still be there if we were still there, because you kind of bounce around. The main thing has been health issues. I went into senior ministry in June of 2016, but only because I'd had my second cancer operation in April of 2016. So I'd go to New York for a year to recover. And as soon as I could get out, I got out of there. Unfortunately, in 2017, I had my third bout of a different kind of cancer. So as soon as I finished the chemo in 2018, I came here because it was a wonderful opportunity to continue ministry on weekends. And I think that's the blessing. So I don't think any Paulists really, quote, retires, or most priests, until you're physically unable. And so I felt my age the past year. It was just about a year ago this week. I was driving back from New Jersey, where I was visiting family. And I suddenly realized once the sun went down, I couldn't read the road signs. Luckily, I was coming up 69, 80, 69. I knew the lanes. I knew if I just stay in this lane this far, when I get to Grand Rapids, stay in the left lane. But I came back, I went to the house and said, that's it. I'm not driving the interstate anymore. And then I drove another month or two around here, going over to Walgreens or the bank, but last June, July, I said, I don't want to hurt somebody. I don't want to hurt myself either. So I just gave up driving. But it became official when the cataract surgery failed in June. I had macular degeneration in the left eye since 2016, but as long as the good eye was there, I could, drive and move and get around. but I've been legally blind really for almost a year now, I guess 6 or 8 months. And that's when it hit me. And it's not so much age, but the suddenly physical dependency on everybody for anything. I'm pretty much homebound. I can't even get out. The guys are wonderful. I mean, I get everywhere I need to go, doctor's appointments and arrangements are made, but I love walking, but like the last couple of weeks I felt it because it's I can't see. I'm afraid to walk on the ice, things like that. So I'd say the aging hit me in the last 6 months, but mainly because of the health, not because of age as such. And I think most priests continue in ministry as long as you can. I am no longer able to see or read the books, for public mass. I can celebrate, I can preach, I can help with reconciliation, but I don't have that independence. So I think that's would be the issue that hit me more, the total dependence. I keep in mind my mother, who had the macular degeneration in both eyes for the last 20, 25 years of her life. And I just hope I can keep the same sense of humor she had and laugh at myself because it's the only way to keep going. But that's kind of a long way to get there. But yeah, I felt it the last 6 months to a year.
Yeah. Thank you, Father Charlie. Father Joachim, can you tell us about a time in which your advancing age felt burdensome?
It's a hard one because I'm in really good health. I don't have any issues. I'm going on my 47th mission to the Dominican Republic next month. And naturally I do more moral encouragement than pushing wheelbarrows around like I used to. But I look upon it as a gradual diminishment that is natural, and it's preparing you for the final transition into your real home, okay? And so I noticed some issues of balance like Father Bill mentioned, but not seriously. I've given up skiing because I don't trust my balance with that. I get on my treadmill almost every day and just got a rebounder and trying that out. And but I had cataract surgery, so I don't need glasses for reading or distance. No hearing issues. So as long as I can, I'm going to keep plugging away. So I'm very happy that I'm able to do what I can do as long as I can. But I will be back with the Paulist brothers and be dependent more on people like Father Mike to perhaps push my wheelchair around. But I've already decided I'm going to get a notarized statement that he will not push it down the stairs. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. I promise.
You're probably sign here.
I won't put it in writing, but I'll promise verbally. Well, thank you. Thank you. Certainly stories of dependency and accepting loss, I think, is what I'm hearing from kind of this advanced aging process. Now, on the other side, there are many benefits to aging, I imagine. Can you tell us about a story, a time in which your advancing age has felt like a gift that you've been given? Father Bill?
Well, it's great that people are asking me all the time, how are you? And I did have a heart problem a couple of years ago. I had a heart stent put in. And so people are aware and, that I'm struggling with a couple of issues. And that makes people especially aware. I don't like people doing things for me. I would rather them say, is it all right for you to do this? Do you feel all right doing this? I guess I'm at the point of saying, I want to continue to do as much as I can, as long as I can. And it's, I guess the benefit is having people around you that care about you enough to ask.
Thank you, Father Bill. Father Charlie?
Yeah, the joy of age, I think, is the experience. And many things, since I'm not as physically active other than walking, I'm not as visual. I had an incident just recently with an old friend from the CIC days when I was here. Well, we were talking at the door. Chris started working at the CIC in 1989, and I came in 1970 with Irene and Jim Haley and Bob Sirico and Jim Fisher and stuff. So this is somebody, a family I've known that they don't live in Grand Left. They've moved up, but he was diagnosed with brain cancer just a week ago. And I was able to spend Saturday with him up in Rockford and just sitting at home mass and chatting and talking and just kind of going through. I'd seen them since I've been back here, but it was a whole new way where my experience, and I think my three different kind, nothing's the same when you're dealing with cancer, but there's similarities. And my 3 times around the block with it, I found that experience and age very helpful and able to be with someone else who's just beginning to feel the fear, the anxiety, the wonder of a diagnosis. So in some ways, the experience of aging, I think I've found I've been able to relate to other people who may be just starting the journey in different ways. So that's been a benefit, I think.
Thanks, Father Charlie. Father Joachim, a time in which felt like a gift.
Well, I agree with Father Charlie, the sense of experience. I'm working in the permanent diaconate program for the diocese now and doing group spiritual direction. And I've got, about 60 years of experience in religious life and priesthood. And so that I feel confident of that. It's real, it's experience and not just book knowledge. So I like that. And there's a certain a matter of deference that comes when you see someone with white hair. It's like, yeah, I could people, say, "Oh, you're looking so good," and I say, well, yeah, there's 3 ages, youth, middle age, and you're looking good. So those are the 3. But I just enjoy life. I really love contemplative prayer and every day, God twice a day, and I just am grateful that I'm able to let God's love flow through me. It's all about flow. It's not my love or what I'm doing. It's letting God love through me. And I'm just so grateful for that. It's going to take all eternity to say thanks.
Thank you, Father Joachim. Now, I'd like to ask you each different questions. You each have a different experience with aging and how it has affected another part of your life, I think. So I'm going to start with Father Charlie. You mentioned how your bouts with cancer and other medical issues over the years as you've aged have mounted. And what would you say is what wisdom, how have you grown in wisdom as you've grown in age with respect to your health and issues that come up with your health?
Yeah, this is a phrase I first heard and I read in one of the lives of Cardinal Cushing in Boston, who was actually a relative of my grandmother's, and they'd grown up together. I'm in pretty good shape for the shape I'm in, and I keep saying that, no matter what. I'm in pretty good shape for the shape I'm in, but the shape changes. I turned 65 in, when was it, 1968. Medicare insurance. So 3 months later, I had my first cancer surgery, and then followed by, 6 months of chemo and all those goodies. 8 years later, it was a different kind of cancer in 2016. The first was colon. The second was biliary duct, which scared the heck out of me because it was cholangio or some kind of thing. And I Googled it and it said, death rate 96%, My oncologist was furious. She said, "That's my job to read the articles, not yours. Throw your Google away." And we did the treatment and that went fine. And then when I went to New York, it was to recover, but I wound up with a second come around with it. So and then most recently, it was last year, just about a year ago, April, was pancreatic tumor or cyst, benign, but it's still there, so I had to worry about it. And then in November, I now have, I guess I don't know what the stage is, but kidney disease. I had to see a renal specialist because of diabetic kidney, and I started insulin a year ago. So what I realized is, well, so what? Something else is coming along. I'm not when when they said renal disease 6 months ago, I was scared to death, like I was the first time they said cancer. Now cancer doesn't worry me. Oh, okay, I've been there, done that kind of a thing. So I think the important thing is I've been blessed everywhere in Oregon and New York and here with very good primary physicians who stay on top of things, who know the experts and early detection and referral, by a good primary physician is the answer. It's kept me alive, and so I think that's something I've learned over the years. I'm talking for almost 15 years now. And don't worry about this issue, because it's like you go to confession, you say, well, Father, I struggled with this last time, and God's grace has helped me do pretty good with it. And I say, well, great, okay, what's the next issue then? What are you working now? Because once we do away with one thing, there's something else to be there. That's part of being human. So what I've learned in terms of health and being a senior citizen, if you want to use those words, is to stay in touch with the doctor. Don't get discouraged, because the treatments are there, and early detection is the key. Good coverage as best you can, and don't let it wear you down, because a lot of the stuff is mental. I mean, it's obvious physical, but if you do the physical requirements or what's the physical causes, they'll generally take care of themselves. The problem is always late detection and stage 4, stuff like that, when it's, when the options aren't that easy. So I'm going around in circles. Well, I guess what I've learned is just to, don't get discouraged. And don't get overconfident, because don't worry, if this, something else will come along. So don't get all puffed up when you succeed with one area, because something else will come along. So just learn to roll with it. That's just how I do. And I try to stay positive. There are times when you get down, and I remember a good friend of mine, Paulist, the first time I had cancer, he was in Boston, I was in Oregon. I called Jack. He said, why me? Why me? And he said, why not you? That's right. Thousands of other people have cancer. Why should I worry? Why not me? So I think that's the important thing, because I think our reaction to any kind of crisis medical was, why me, God? Why me? Why me? And so that why not me is an important phrase to keep in mind no matter what happens medically. Why not? There's thousands of people. I'm blessed that I have insurance. I go crazy every time I get a prescription refilled, and I say, what was it? The diabetic strips. I ran out, and then the insurance was fighting, so I paid $29 to $25, and I used 3 a day. A week later, I got 300 for $9 because the insurance kicked in. What the hell do people do who don't have insurance in this country? That's the challenge. I think I'm blessed, so why complain?
Cool. Thanks, Father Charlie. Thank you. Father Bill, now you mentioned how you've been, or maybe I mentioned how you've been pursuing a certificate, going through a program in spiritual listening. And so how would you say that as you've advanced in age, grown in age, wisdom, that maybe your spirituality has changed, or that, your experience and what you've gained in terms of your own personal spirituality and how you bring it to others?
The first thing I'd like to do is mention a story about one of the Olympians, Nathan Chen. I love figure skating. I mentioned this on Sunday. I love figure skating. And he's an American. He's old for a skater. But in 2018, at the 2018 Olympics, he fell. He was a great, extremely talented guy, but he fell and he messed up, and he was just very discouraged. He was in 17th place. And then he said to himself, you know what? I can't get a medal this time around, so I'm not skating for a medal. I'm skating for myself. And with just in a burst of joy, he skated his best skating ever at that time, because he wasn't worried about the medal. And then he won 3 years in a row in the national championships. And then he thought, I'm not going to be able to skate forever, so I'm going to do something else. And he entered Yale University. And now he's a student at Yale University, and he can still skate. So he flies back and forth. He takes a test, and he goes and he skis, and then he comes back and he studies. And why that story is attractive to me is that he has a balanced life now. He's not just all about one thing. And that's important to me because I've been all about, ministry, all about preaching, all about trying to do well as a priest. And what this program in spiritual listening is teaching me is that there's more to life than doing. There's a lot more to life than achieving or giving a good homily or something like that. It's about finding the joy in every moment. And that for me is the beginnings of spirituality for me, is to try to find joy every day. Just a moment of joy, notice it. Maybe look around and try to increase it the next day. Maybe I'll have another 2 moments of joy the next day. And finding life to be more than work or achievement, trying to find a balanced life. And I really appreciate also listening to your body. What is your body telling you? Are you in stress? Why are you in stress? And trying to find out from your body, what is the most enjoyable way to live? To increase those moments of joy, but to increase the amount of good feeling in your body, the amount of joy in your relationships. Is to take time every day to be with God, to not just rush through the day. I tend to be a workaholic. So this is beginning to tell me, that's not the way to live. The way to live includes a lot more focus on relationships, being with people, switch from doing things to building relationships. I will be listening to others through this process, through this listening ministry, but also listening to myself. And those are a couple of things that they're beginning to awaken in me. Take the time for enjoyment. Take the time to be with God. Take the time to build relationships. And those are some of the things that I'm beginning to learn.
Thank you, Father Bill. Father Joachim, as mentioned before, as you mentioned, you've been still do a lot of mission trips to the Dominican Republic and active at the clothing center. So very socially active still. And you also mentioned your practice of contemplative prayer, and I imagine those two go well together. And so how have those kinds of things developed as you've advanced in age, and how has your age and experience and wisdom helped in that part of your life?
Okay, we've all heard the expression, the eyes have it, right? Well, it's all about seeing as God sees. And that's what contemplation does. It opens your eyes to see reality, not as you want it to be, but as it is. And when we look at our advancing years, it's not, if we think, well, it shouldn't be this way, we judge it, well, then we're going to get angry at it. If we could just accept it as this is what it is, and it's a part of the transition into our real home, then when we start to learn the beauty of it. I like what I've done several art exhibitions at Marywood. I do a lot of artwork, oil and pastel and watercolor and charcoal and so forth. And so the last exhibition I had was a quote from Dostoevsky, which said, "The world will be saved by beauty." And so I'm always looking for beauty in people, in circumstances. And I do in my mission work. I am so blessed to have gone down there over about 50 times, and to see the beauty of people who are so poor. I mean, I've been in places where they didn't have but one chair, and they'd give that chair to you, on dirt floors. And it's just to see the beauty of the people as they are. There are no pretensions. And I personally am prejudiced. I prefer working with the financially poor. I'm not against anyone who's not. I mean, if you want to be evangelized, go and work with the poor. Just realize their beauty and their because they have nothing to lose. And so they tend to be more open to God's love. And so I would say that what Father Bill mentioned about joy, the joy is a byproduct of love. And for me, it's, I tell people I'm ooling. You ever heard of ooling? It's out of love, doing everything out of love, ooling. So I get up in the morning, I touch the crucifix and I say, I do everything out of love today. And out of that love comes the joy. It's a byproduct. And so I'm just so privileged to let that love flow through me, and to this contemplative prayer just opened my eyes to how God is living within me and summoning me. I love the word summoning me to greater generosity and giving your life away, you know, and like Woolheiser says, giving your life away, giving your death away. So it's exciting.
All right. Thank you, Father Joachim. Your sort of interest in serving the poor makes me think of the Beatitudes we just listened to this past Sunday. And thanks for mentioning your painting, which is something that I know is really dear to you, and also intersects well with your contemplation and your service, how all of those things are mixed together and complement one another. So,
and I forgot to mention music. I was organist in a monastery, the Benedictine monastery, for 10 years. And I had a lot of piano and organ, but I've put it all aside to do art. You can't do both. All right. So.
Thank you to all three of you. Now I would like to open it up for a broader discussion for anybody who has a question or their own reflection. We're also happy to hear if you have something to say about how you've grown in age and wisdom and experience. Certainly would like to have a discussion and dialogue about that as well. So I don't know the best way to do it, just to ask for people to raise hands, and then you can, and you'll check for people online as well.
Now.
Okay.
Touch screen.
Okay.
Hopefully that gave you all enough time to think about your questions.
Yes, I'm Sister Rosita. And Father Charlie, I especially like how you elaborated on the fact that age is irrelevant. It really is a problem only when a person begins to experience some health issue, or they are limited in one way or another. And so it really bothers me when I hear people who are 62 or 65 say, I'm going to retire. And so they retire and vegetate. When in fact, if they stayed engaged, if they're in good health, it's so much better for a person psychologically, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And so I appreciated how you elaborated on that. Thank you. And to me, it's so important.
Others, there's questions, comments? I have my own, but I want you guys to. I'm learning a lot here. Anybody on?
That's what I was just.
Is it kind of intimidating having this camera in front of you while you speak?
We're sitting above you.
I'm Darlene. This isn't a question. This is a, I guess, comment that how kind the three of you are and the other Paulists, and when I have difficulties, and so supportive, and I love the hugs when I can get them. And I want to thank you for all that you do. Everything that you do for us. And it's so heartwarming to me to have you in my life.
Thank you, Tom.
I don't know, I probably should be asking this to other people, but in my own life, I'm hyperactive. So I zoom, zoom, zoom all the time. And my wife was gifted with 50% nerve loss when she was 40. We've been living with that for 30 years. And we're constantly running into each other because of our differences of health. And I just wonder how you deal with one another when, you know, some people have severe health issues and other people don't. How do you handle that in age? I don't know if that's a question or not, or just a cry. It's hard, but we work it out somehow. It's, you know, yesterday, Valentine's Day, we spent the whole day together, and I'm always on the wheelchair and she's always receiving it, but sometimes that's difficult to relate to each other. It's hard.
Could you repeat the question?
He was asking about, and tell me if I'm broad, if I'm misquoting, but there are sort of the challenges of living together with people who have health issues and limitations and people who don't have as much. So how do you live together, be together when there are sort of different levels of physical ability or different limitations that people have?
Well, I've obviously, in the last year been feeling the physical limitation more. But I also think my presence is there for guys who are going through, maybe crises or questions, or that there's other, the physical disability is not the only disability in life or physical challenge. Somebody might be going through, like sometimes we did challenge Bill, the whole house though, in terms of hyperactivity, step back, take it easy. And it was helpful for him. So I think we all have, it's not a question of just, physical disability. I don't want to say he's a disability for hyperactive, but let him say it. But I think you know what I mean, that each of us has different issues in which we need help, and that's what community is all about. Somebody needs somebody to say, slow down, or you're taking yourself too seriously, or whatever, laugh a little more at yourself, or so it didn't go like you wanted. So what? The sun came up this morning, didn't it? So there's different ways in which you help each other. I know that I feel, this is my problem though, it's not the other guy. I'm feeling more like a burden at times. And that's new for me because my whole life I've been independent. And I think most priests and certainly most Paulists are pretty independent characters. So suddenly being totally dependent has been an issue for me to struggle with. I don't know what the burden is for the other guys, but I know that they do go out of their way to, I usually give a month or 2 months of here's, I need to be these my whole social life for the last year is centered around doctor's appointments. That's no fun. But, the guys have a list and somebody signs up, I'll take you on such and such a day. I'll take you on such and such a day. This week I had some problems because I have 2 appointments and parishioners have stepped forward to pick me up, because guys couldn't make it. So I think that there are opportunities, for other people to step forward. And I think I'm learning now that it's okay for me to say I need, because it's giving somebody else an opportunity to give. And, not bragging, but all priests spend their whole life giving. And sometimes we think that's all there is. The most difficult thing for sometimes is to knowing how and when to receive. Sometimes it's better to receive than to give. And if not for no other reason, to allow somebody else the opportunity to feel good about giving.
And one of the things I've enjoyed is Charlie and I will go shopping late at night, like 8 or 9 p.m. It's a great time to shop because there's not that many people around, but it's also a good time to talk, to be together, to have some fellowship. I agree, Charlie. I think that community is so important, and which is why I joined a religious order. But to have people of different abilities and different interests and live in the same house with them, it's family. I mean, it's joy. It's why I joined the Paulist Fathers.
And now he helps me read labels, so that's good.
If I may say something, that's kind of what we have found. Like, for instance, one night at 10 o'clock, we went to Meijer's store, and I jumped into one of those carts as well. And we had so much fun. We ran into our 22-year-old guy that's kind of our adopted son. And it ended up with pizza that night and a whole bunch of stuff. So, I'm not complaining or griping, but I'm saying that, wow, sometimes it's just hard though, because I run over her because I'm handicapped in the head and she has it physical, and it's really tough to be human sometimes.
I'm Nancy D'Amico, and as someone who's been around Paulists for 40-some years, we've seen so many of you come and go. And it's always difficult for me, those transitions when, you get close to someone and then they leave and new people come in. How has that been for you? Is it difficult for you when you are in a place for, 4 to 5 years and then you move to a different place? I'm assuming the community aspect of it makes it easier, but how is it when you are moving from one end of the country to the other? Is it challenging? Is it difficult, or is it enlivening?
Well, I could just say for my own, I think I've figured out I've moved something like, I think it was 20 times, something like that. I forgot, but transitions are hard. There's no way around it. And but they're all a preparation, in a sense, for the final transition where we're all going home. And so it's a matter of accepting reality that we are going to be transitioning, but it's hard to let go. It's hard to let go of friends that you've been with for many years and grown to love, and they've loved you, and to get acquainted with another city. And, it's not easy. Different Paulists and so forth, And so transitioning, like you're talking about, Nancy, stretch issues. And I think we all need some stretching. So we tend not to want to change. I think of transition every morning when I get up. It's like, okay, transition's not easy, Joachim, get out of bed, And then I touch the crucifix and say, everything today out of love. And so that sets the tone for the day. But It's not easy.
You guys want to say?
I've had 11 different assignments and physical assignments as a Paulist. And sometimes within that assignment, sometimes over the years, 2 or 3 different types of assignments. I started out with 15 years of campus at the University of Texas, at Boston University, University of Tennessee. Then I moved into parish ministry in Utah, Information Center here in Grand Rapids. I was out on sabbatical in Los Angeles, then Grand Rapids, Chicago, Oregon, back to New York, and then back here. So, but each time you move, yeah, there's a pain, there's a transition, there's a sense of leaving, but also there's the excitement of meeting new people and new places, new experiences. And in every place, there are friends that I still have and there's still contact with. You know, going back 50 years to Austin, I was helping out there or doing a mission nearby, and I'm like, I can get a phone and visit somebody I hadn't seen in for 40 years. And so I think there's a pain in it, but at the same time, I chose to be a missionary rather than the diocesan clergy who kind of, you know, didn't leave more than 50 miles of an area. You know, they were in the same place all the time. I miss when I finished up in Utah, it was my family who said, come back east. You've been in the West for the last 25 years. We'd like to see you. and it was good. I saw more of them the 2 years in New York, but it was kind of stale living, you know, in New York. I love visiting, you know, I love to visit New York City, but don't want to live there. But it was just a difficulty. There wasn't that much ministry to do. So I came here as soon as I could, you know, so I think the transitions are important. I try to see what's the blessing in this move. And I'm also gratified with the friends I have all over the country. When I was in Oregon, I'd regularly just take a week because I couldn't go back east to visit family. I'd be in Utah maybe 3 or 4 times a year, drive over for a week or 2 to visit parishioners, even though the Paulists left in 1990. You know, we hadn't been in that parish for 30 years. But I still had friends that I go back and visit there. In fact, our joke is 2 years ago, 3 years ago, Evan was ordained. Evan grew up in the parish in Layton, Utah. Well, I was the last pastor in the Paulist pastor, but I left 2 years before Evan was born. He's a new Paulist from our old parish because the Paulists withdrew back there in 1990. So, but there's always people to go back to and visit. And there's also the variety, which I like also, the different Paulists you get to live and meet with. But every Paulist knows every other one, and we all know our foibles as well as our strengths. And, you know, it's good to be with different ones over the years. And I can say that there's not a Paulist I haven't met, and I've lived with most of them for some time or another.
Yeah, I'm following up on those, which I completely agree with. I think the other aspect of being a Paulist is not the length of relationships, but the quality of relationships. And the reason that God has brought you into my life, the reason that God has brought me into your life is for a particular insight, a particular growth in character, a particular growth in faith. That's the mission of the Paulist Fathers. And, you know, I'm just so happy to be part of a particular growth in somebody's life, a growth in faith or mission in their own life, or helping them move to the next stage of their life. That's really the blessing of being a priest. My mother always said, when I talked to her on the phone, she always says, when are you coming home? And I go, weren't you in favor of me joining the Paulist Fathers in the first place? And she goes, yes, I was.
Thank you.
We do have a question online we have a question online from Dan Pearson. Dan, go ahead.
Thank you, Mark. I'd like to flip the conversation a bit and ask a question to Father Mike. Father Mike, you and Father Rene are in the second third of life. And being so young that the two of you are, what are you learning, or what are the challenges that you feel that you're experiencing? Obviously, Father Charlie needs some assistance and some care from you and Father Rene. And Father Joachim is moving back To the rectory there. So what are you two guys experiencing and in your life at this time, learning from these guys, the older guys?
So for the sake of our folks here in the room who may not have been able to hear the question, could you repeat the question, Father Mike?
Sure. Do I need a microphone?
Yes.
Charlie.
Here you go. Here you go.
So I'll try to summarize what Dan said. I think as Father Rene and I are in the second third of our lives, what our experience living with priests in their third third of lives, I think what are sort of the blessings and what are the challenges, and what are we learning from it all? Is that more or less, Dan, or would you?
Nope, that's it. You got it.
Okay, great. Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think I don't know how well I could speak for Father Rene, but for myself, this is my first year as a priest, and so there are a lot of things that come up for the first time, and that'll continue until I've completed a full year. Like, I haven't spent Easter as a priest, for instance, and I think what's been really helpful to live with others who have gone through many years of it is that, like, whatever issue I come across, whatever challenge I come across is not, it seems very daunting to me and like a big deal. They've seen the same sort of thing many times. And so it really kind of calms my nerves about it when I talk to them. I mean, most things that are at all challenging, and this is the best part of being in, maybe not the best, but one of the best parts about being in a religious community is I have that opportunity when something comes up in ministry that I've never seen before, I have no idea what to do with, I can just bring it up at dinner. Like, listen, guys, like, this came up today, and they have their own experiences and their own suggestions on how to how to go about this, or kind of what strategy to come up with in order to address this issue. And that's been a great benefit for me. And I think that just living with older Paulists, I think that's, there are, as sort of related to Rod's question before, I mean, we all have different limitations, as Father Charlie was saying, some physical, some otherwise. And I think it's just a matter of trying to offer one another sort of if we don't have a limitation, then we have some sort of like overflowing of some grace, I guess, and offering to one another what the other might be lacking in some way. And I think that's, as our gifts complement one another. So yeah, as Father Charlie said, so there's times when we need to be available to help Father Charlie, get to some place or another, or something he can't see very well, and help him fix things, whatever it might be. But there's also, a lot that I gain from him, and just his historical knowledge of things and his experience of things. So I think there's a lot of give and take. So I benefit a lot from it too, in that way. And I think, I think in that way I can speak for Father Rene that he would say the same for that. So.
Thank you.
Years back, there was all sorts of distress at our southern border, and families and all sorts of horrible problems. And so some were concerned with how can we get them shelter, food, clothes, books, because their children wouldn't be educated yet for a while. And I remember I had come, I can prove to you I'm old because I came to a class, I can't tell you what year it was or what the class was, but you had just returned from the border. And what you did, instead of worrying about things we probably couldn't, food, clothes and all that, you'd gone down and done something with your hands with children. And that's a different way of seeing. We were worried about practical things, but nothing more practical than losing your childhood. So is that because of you'd worked a lot with people from the southern parts, South America, et cetera, or this scene, you were trying to return their childhood to them, I guess. I forgot, was it some kind of magic you were doing with balloons and stuff? How did that come about, seeing that that was something that needed to be done?
Okay, thank you. Mel. Yeah, I went down to El Paso and worked in the center there that was receiving migrants and helping them get clothing and medicine and food and sleeping and taking them to airports and railroad stations, bus stations. But I noticed that the children just seemed particularly lost, and they've been uprooted from their countries. And so one of the things I've done since I left, I started in Grand Rapids, that was clowning. Okay, I like to call myself a fool for Christ rather than a clown. But St. Paul said, unless you become a fool, right? And so I think the priesthood is a connecting thing. The word pontifex in Latin means pons is bridge and faccio facere is to build. So a priest is by nature a bridge builder. It's a connector. And so one of the ways I do connecting is through clowning and tricks and humor and visiting prisons, and I get enlivened by that. I just get this unspeakable joy, and it's all about. My favorite quotation is from John 17:21, that all may be one. It's all about wanting, as Julian of Norwich would say, making oneness, being oneness, experiencing oneness. And that's just another way of doing it. And so, but I just will add that I thought I was all set. I went down to El Paso and I spoke Spanish and English. I'll be all set. Over half the people that came across the border were from Brazil. Portuguese. I don't know Portuguese. So thank goodness I had Google Translate on my phone. So when I was doing interviews, I could use that. But it's just all about wanting. Okay.
We have another question online from Gloria.
Okay.
Gloria, go ahead.
So many wonderful Paulists seem to retire to Grand Rapids. What is the draw of this cold Michigan city?
Did everyone catch that? Okay. What was that?
Do it for Charlie. He did.
Oh, Charlie.
What was the question? Yeah.
A lot of Paulists retire here. What's the draw? Given the weather.
You are.
Yeah, given the weather.
It's not the weather. I think it's ministry. Again, when I first went to senior ministry, it was mostly for recovery in New York for 1 year and extended to 2. But there's nothing to do there. You have 25 priests living in the house, and maybe 10 or 80 or 90 or over. There's the parish staff, there's the community headquarters. Unless you grew up and know the local parishes, there's no work to do. So I would get down to my sister's house in southern New Jersey as often as I could and help out in the parishes around there. But here, when I came before COVID, you can, if you want, you can be in a different parish every weekend. So I think what draws retired or senior ministry, retire is not the right word. Senior ministry priests are drawn to Grand Rapids because of the opportunity to continue in pastoral ministry.
Right on.
And right now, I'm at a loss. I'll probably be going back to New York, not only because of the cold, but I can't do public mass. I can help with confessions. I can preach when asked. I can give opinions all the time. That's a big problem there. But in terms of, reading invisible, I'm learning to do mass with an iPad, but it's awkward, so, and I think the doctors in the medical facilities here are wonderful, obviously. So I think, the ministry is what it would attract people to come back here.
I agree.
Do you have something there?
I was just going to make a comment. Father Charlie mentioned something about being a burden. One thing I've found is that people who say they don't want to be a burden are a burden. I know I have an next door neighbor right now who says always, I don't want to be a burden. And by saying she doesn't want to be a burden is a burden. If she just tell me what she wants, I could help her. As Father Joachim has said, if we love each other and we help each other, that's what we need to do for other people, is just help them out. My mother used to always say, I don't want to be a burden. And by doing that, she was a burden. Well, I didn't want to call you to the last, till this was wrong. So something was really hurting me. Well, if you call me when something really started hurting, I could help you more than, waiting till the last minute. So for all of us that are eldering here or getting older, when something starts to bother her, tell people, don't worry about being a burden. That's what other people are there for, to help each other, because we are, all of us, in a community. So.
Yeah, I think when I say I'm a burden, I'm
Yeah.
saying it to myself. I'm a burden to myself.
But we
Yeah,
have to
not
get
to other
that
people.
idea out of our heads, because we all together, we're all living in, like you said, when the fellow Paulist can't take you, there's parishioners that can take you, or,
Right.
and we all have to think that way. We're all a community together, and we can't think of ourselves as that we're a burden. We're all children of God, and we're all here to help each other.
Yeah,
And
another
I'm
part
saying
of me
that for
says you
myself
owe
too.
me. I mean, another
I'm
part of me
saying
says-
I'm saying that for myself too. I'm so thrilled right now that we're going to Disney World, and my husband is saying, I'm gonna get a scooter, because he has problems with his feet, and usually we'll walk 5 steps and he'll go, I can't walk anymore. And he said, get me a scooter. And I'm so grateful that he's not, being a burden. So yeah, we have to think of that. We're not burdens. That's all I had to say.
Sure.
So in recent years, I think more about death. And I wondered, does that happen to you? Do you think about death and about your funeral and about those kinds of things as end of life? Or is that something that just kind of eludes you? What experience have you had in that area, if any?
In some ways, we're forced to look at it. The Paulist Fathers require every year, where is your will? What are your arrangements for mass? Where do you want to be buried? These are annual things we go through. They're even asking us now, would you want to write your obituary? That's pretty attractive. You get to say what it's rather than you can lie and be nice, kind of a. But I think you certainly think about it, and but I'm not sure whether I think about it in terms of, I'm not afraid of it, so I don't think it's something to be feared. I wonder about it if different health crises come, but again, that's kind of a selfish reaction. What about, and then you learn more about the health issues, say, well, okay, something else to move on beyond. But I think thinking about it is important. You have to. And I've looked at my sisters and brothers and families. There's only my youngest sister and I out of the 5 of us left. And the way someone was unplanned, didn't care a thing, and kind of the mess it created for the others, not really talking about, wills and things and family. So in some ways I see it as not necessarily evil, necessary good for the benefit of other people. Something you should be doing.
Yeah, I would jump into that too and say that some people die well and some people do not die well. And by which I mean some people are bitter and angry at the end, and some are grateful and graceful. And that's the kind of person I want to be. It's the person that's graceful, that shares your dying process with people. It's just as a part of life. It's not like you've lost something. It's like you're going towards something. You're going home. Father Joachim says you're going home. And if you could share that with people in a graceful way, then that's a blessing.
Let me just add here that I had a blessing when I was in that inner city parish in St. Louis, and when I was 30 years old, and was in my office and with some volunteers, and 3 guys came in with sweaters over their noses and 2 shotguns and a pistol and sat on the floor. And next thing I was on the floor and I had a shotgun in the back of my head, and I could feel the muzzle. And I was thinking, okay, any minute now, this is it, you know. But I was just so blessed that I did not feel fear. You know, if someone had told me a week ahead of time, next week you're going to, I would have died 1,000 times, you know. But at the very moment, I felt peace. And that was, you know, what, 50 years ago, over 50 years ago. And once you have that experience, like, you're free. You know, it's not a big deal. You know that God is with you in that moment. Count on it. Do not be afraid. All right.
Any final comments?
Well, one, thank you for all 3 of you for being part of this. I know I learned a lot, and you know, and especially as I begin my priesthood and just learning from you guys, and I do here, but I do every day as well. So it's a blessing to have you to be around me all of this time, Father Rene as well. Just to yeah, as I say, I just try to soak it all in as much as I can. So thank you all 3 of you. So thank you.
Maybe could I end with the joke?
Sure, it's always a good way to.
Okay. I love this joke. I just told this, I had all 4 masses in Nuevo and White Cloud over the weekend. And at the end of mass, I said, you know, Pope Francis is the Pope of joy. And he wants all of us to be full of joy. Okay. And humor is one expression of joy. So I told my favorite joke that someone told me when I was up in Everett one time. This burglar broke into a house about 2 in the morning. My brothers have heard it. So, you know, it's the same thing with couples married for years. You hear the same joke over and over, you know. That's love, right? Okay. So anyway, this burglar broke in this house at 2 in the morning, wanted to get the jewelry and the silverware and get out before anybody saw him. Well, he accidentally tipped the lamp over and woke up the husband and the wife in the bedroom. And they came out and they saw him, and he didn't have his COVID mask on. Okay. So, so he said, "Oh no, you've seen my face. Now I've got to do away with you. But I have this custom that I like to know the name of the people that I do away with." All right. So he goes to the wife and says, "Okay, dear, what's your name?" And she says very proudly, "My name is Elizabeth." And the burglar said, "Elizabeth, you've got to be kidding me. That's my mother's name. I could never hurt anyone with the name Elizabeth. Never." Goes to the husband. "Okay, sir, what's your name?" Very proudly, like his wife, he says, "My name is John, but everybody calls me Elizabeth."
Keep them laughing.
Well, thank you to all 3 of you, 3rd Paulists and the 3 Paulists in their third day of life. I'm going to put Father Charlie on the spot to offer a prayer for us and bless our food as well. Could you do that for us, Charlie?
Yep. Okay. Lord, we thank you for the life, the gift of life and love which you give to us every day of our lives. We thank you for the opportunity to discover you in the lives of others, and as they help us discover you in our own lives. And we ask you to bless us, bless the work of the Paulist Fathers, the work here of the Diocese of Grand Rapids. Bless this food that it may strengthen us, so we may continue to grow and do your will each day as we pray together. Bless us,
O Lord, and these thy gifts which we are about to receive from thy bounty through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Father Charlie, thank you. Father Mike, Father Joachim, Father Bill, thank you very much for sharing your wisdom and your faith with us. For those of you joining us on Zoom, we're really glad that you could be part of the conversation today. And hopefully you have something good planned for lunch and some continued conversation. And the conversation continues about the burdens and blessings of age. We'll be able to share with one another at our tables. And just in terms of announcements, next month, we're looking forward to having Father Frank Desiderio, not here, but on Zoom, who will be talking about renewing our faith through forgiveness and conversion as a way of life. And then in April, we're going to be featuring Dr. Kyle Kramer from Louisville, Kentucky, who will be talking about simple living and the benefits of simple living, especially as it ties into care for creation and care for our neighbors. So as St. Elizabeth Ann Seton was known for saying, live simply so that others may simply live. We're going to have the conversation with that and our featured guest with Dr. Kyle Kramer in April. So you can check out details of both of those programs online at our website, and we look forward to the conversation here yet this morning. Thank you again, everyone online. This ends the meeting, and we can take a stretch break here, and you can help yourselves to lunch. Buon provecho.
Thank you, Mark.
Good, thanks, Mark.
Very good. Good job. Good job.
Thank you. You too.
Yeah. You've been doing this all your life.
Not quite.
Move over, who was famous